Alright, test. Trying to see if I got this working. Come on. Okay. Okay. I think we're good. Live streaming. Fun stuff, trying to get it organized and all ready to go. Okay, so welcome. My name is Trevor LeClaire, and this is something new I'm doing on YouTube. A little bit of a Lightroom photo editing session post a trip that I just went on. So this past month, I spent about 2.5 weeks in Costa Rica and got a bunch of photos. So I figure this would be a great opportunity to jump on in and edit some photos live while having some nice casual conversations with folks. So hopefully everything is good on your all's end. Definitely leave a comment in the chat if you can hear me okay. And I will basically go through my photos one at a time and just do some fun edits. So I have 3 different folders over here from my Costa Rica trip. And, oh, hold on. It would help if you could see that. Okay. Boom. There we go. So here's some of my photos on Lightroom right now, and on the left side I have 3 folders over here containing photos. Now you see that I have more than 100 photos in each folder, but I'm not going to edit all of those. So I went through and already selected a few images that I'm considering editing on this live stream, and my plan is to edit 5 photos from each of these folders, taken in 3 different locations basically, or they're in 3 different workshops. So I'm going to edit 5 photos from each of these folders, and yeah, that would basically be the stream. So let's go and give it a run. So I'm going to start with this photo right here, which is of a flowerpiercer. Beautiful birds. Really cool. I love the beak on them too. Isn't that cool with that little hook? Yeah, so let's go to development. Boom. Did it already crop? Oh yeah. So let's reset that back to the original image. There we go. That was the original image. And like I said, if you can hear me, go ahead and leave a comment in the chat. Let me know that you can hear me. I'm going to do a test chat real quick. All right, so I think it's connected. All right, good. I got a comment. Awesome. So I'll go ahead and get started. So I got a slaty flowerpiercer right here, and audio video is working. Yes, it's perfect. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and jump right into the fun stuff. So first of all, I'm going to crop this guy down and to an 8x10 over here. There we go. There we go. So I want to get rid of this green over here because to me that's a little distracting. and kind of just stands out too much, and all my eyes want to be drawn right to that, and I want the attention to be focused more on the flower in the flower piercer. So that's why I am cropping this fella in. Alright, and if I zoom in, it's looking pretty good. I love the detail there. These cameras these days, these mirrorless cameras, so nice. Alright, so let's add a little contrast. I'm going to increase the shadows some just to lighten up the birds a little bit. And going down to the effects, just add a little bit of vignette. And the reason I want to do that is darken the edges some just to draw the eyes to the subject a little bit more. And now I'm going to do localized edits. So I just basically did a quick touch up on the entire image as a whole, and now I'm going to basically narrow the focus and do masking on different areas of this image to add some touch ups. So first thing I want to do is let's select subject. Oh, too much subject. So I want just the bird. A lot of times Lightroom masking features, they're really awesome and head on what you exactly want. But here it thinks I want the entire flower, which I don't want. I just want the little birdie. So we're going to go to subtract, brush, big brush, and bye-bye. Just getting rid of all this red. Don't want it. Not here. Not now. Goodbye. Here. And then I'm going to zoom in, double check in here, get rid of this area right through here. Let's erase that red. This is all areas that would be edited, and I don't want to edit this. A little space right there. All right. Under the bird butt. A little bit more of the flower, all the way up here. Boom. All right. Now it's just the bird. Great. So, as you can see, oh wait. Oh no, there's more down here. It's kind of hard to tell what is the red when, you know, your flower is also the red. So get rid of that and this reddish color, I should say. Boom, boom, boom. There's a little bit of spot up here. And then, boom. Okay. I have erased all the flower, so now it's just my bird that is highlighted, and I am going to, let's bring those shadows up a little bit. Just to kind of lighten them up some. Add a little bit more exposure to him. That way he pops a little bit more. And then I'm going to drop down and add just a tad bit of texture and a tad bit of clarity. And just, oops. No, I didn't want to do that. All right. There we go. And then I'm going to go in closer all the way. I mean, look at that. Look at all that finer detail right there. Isn't that crazy? When you zoom really in, it does look a little noisy. But I am also at 400%. So I'm going to add a brush. And I want to brush this area right here. And then I am going to brighten the eye just a little bit. Boop. Not too much, because I don't want to look like a demon bird. Ah, that's scary. So just a tad to kind of brighten it a little bit, add a little more texture, or not texture, clarity to the eye. And then I am going to zoom in again, add another brush, and focus on this piece right here, the pupil. And I'm going to drop the blacks on that and darken that just to make it pop a little bit more. Make it cleaner. There we go. So far, before, after, yeah. So now I'm basically just staring at my photo and kind of deciding what other approaches do I want to take to this. I think I'm going to do a radial gradient on this guy. Kind of around the flower some. About right there. Maybe come in. And then I'm going to hit revert or invert and darken those edges more. Yeah, minor touches. So I'm going to go through and basically show you, these are some of the raw images that I have right now that I'm considering on editing for this. So another flowerpiercer. But yeah, these are all the ones that I'm thinking about editing. So if there's any particular image during this sequence right here that you would like to see me play around with, feel free to mention that in the comments. I think the next one I'm going to do is I'm going to play around with this hummingbird right here because I like this action that we got going on here. The flower is really beautiful and the pose of the hummingbird is great. Yeah, all these images were from Costa Rica. So this folder right here is from San Gerardo de Dota. Up in the cloud forest. So that was a bird focused photography expedition, and it was actually more focused on the resplendent quetzal, which is this beautiful bird right here. Boom. So that was our main target. So we spent the mornings looking for this gorgeous animal, and this is a male right here, and you could tell by the long tails. But after that expedition, we spent a few days chasing birds. Then we went down to the Osa Peninsula, and that's when I got all these. We stayed at Bosque del Cabo, and we spent a day in Corcovado. And that was exciting, fun stuff. And then the final workshop I did was in Tortuguero National Park, which for the most part was on a boat. And so these are the images that I capture on a boat. So I've already went through and basically culled these images and kind of minimize how much I had already. So I had like about 5,000 images total, I think. Maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit less. But as you can tell, I narrowed it down to about 600 images. So I did a lot of culling these past few days. And then I've also gone through and labeled some of them. So you can see this little box right here that has a label. So I went through and identified all the species on all the images that I kept. So that one right there is a ringed kingfisher. But I'll get to these, the Tortuguero here near the end after I play around with some of these bird images, and then I'll jump down to the Osa Peninsula and then Tortuguero. And all of those were taken in Costa Rica while leading the workshop on behalf of Backcountry Journeys. So let's go back to hummingbirds. gonna hit that box right there. These are all the ones I picked. So these are the ones that I'm definitely playing around to edit some. Here's my hummingbird. Boom. Alright, first thing I want to do with this guy is I'm going to go ahead and crop him. And I want to do a vertical crop. Potentially, let's say 16 by 10. Boom. Because I just love that flower. The position of the flower being tall, clean background. I like that the background is dark as well. It really helps that flower pop. And this is one thing I've told people a lot, but when it comes to colors, the warm colors like you see on the flower with the reds and yellows, they tend to pop more. While the cooler colors such as blues and greens kind of tend to fall back more. In addition, the lights do pop out a little bit more and the darks do fall back more. So right now, this flower is basically stealing all of the attention, and I want to give some of my attention to the hummingbird here. So I'm going to brighten him up to help with that. So let's go over to subject. Select subject. There you are. Great. I'm going to actually go ahead and keep the flower on this one. And that way I add clarity to both the hummingbird and the flower, because they're both part of they're both the subject in this image. And then I'm going to increase my shadows just a little bit. See how it looks. It's having a minor impact, but nothing big. You could kind of see a little bit in the flower and on the tip of the hummingbird's tail. So I'll go ahead and increase that. The exposure, I'm going to increase the exposure of the hummingbird and flower because I still got some room over here on the right to move my histogram over. So I'm just going to brighten that a little bit. Ooh, too much. It's maybe about there, and then I'm going to drop my highlights. There we go. So that's what I got so far. So my hummingbird's already nice, looking good, nice and bright. And then I'm going to add I'm going to take a brush. No. Yeah. I'm going to brush this white spot down here because everything in the background is looking pretty dark for the most part, which I like because it helps the hummingbird and flower pop more. But then there's that like little white bright area down here. So I'm going to take that, brush it. Let's darken it. Not doing the justice that I wanted to do. All right, another plan. I'm going to take a linear. Just bring a linear up. And then I'm going to darken it. There we go. That looks better. And then let's go ahead and drop the highlights some. Just a little bit. And then I'm actually going to go back to this. And I'm going to subtract my subject. Boom! So look at that. By subtracting subject, I subtracted the stem right here. So that way the stem is not affected, which is great. So there. Now that's not as distracting. I still hate it. Okay, so I'm going to new plan. So when it comes to photo editing, there's definitely a lot of trial and error, that's for sure. All right, I'm going to crop it and just get rid of that all together as a whole. Okay, now I'm happy. That looks better. Good. Alright, so, and then let's go ahead and do a radial gradient. Just kind of darken these edges a little bit right here. And for the most part, in terms of edits, like this is a simple image. There's not a whole lot in terms of big edits that I would do to this. It helps that like the subject is, well, what's there's a minimal subject in this image. Like it's a flower and a hummingbird. There's not a lot of distractions in it. The background is nice and clean and dark, which helps the hummingbird and flower pop more. So for the most part, the edits on this are kind of minimal compared to what I would do on some of the other images, which is really nice. So before, after. Yeah. All right. There we go. So I'm just examining it, seeing if there's any weird parts about it that just seems off. Oop, come back. There we go. All right, not seeing any halos or anything. Awesome. And this hummingbird was a white-throated mountain jam. That's a cool name for a hummingbird. If you love hummingbirds, you definitely should go to Costa Rica. There are a lot of cool hummingbirds in Costa Rica, especially up in the cloud forests. You go to some of the birding gardens up there, and they got like bird feeders up there for all the hummingbirds to come to, and then there's like a bunch of flowers, which makes for great photography opportunities. And also, if you're a bird watcher, it's just a cool place to go and watch a bunch of birds. Just hang out at the garden with all afternoon, camera mounted in front of you, and just watch birds come and go, and take some photos here, take some photos there, and ta-da! That's pretty much your day. That is kind of what our schedule looked like on the day-to-day basis. Like, we spent the morning, we got up early, we went out looking for the quetzal, and after photographing the quetzal, then we came back, had lunch, spent the afternoon at a bird garden, watching and photographing birds, and poof. That was pretty much our day for the most part. So I'm just giving 3 stars to the ones that I've edited so far. Let's see, I'm going to drop my highlights down, see how this looks. Yeah, I'll drop my highlights down just a little bit. My whites. No. Brighten it a little more. Add a little more, just a little more exposure. Okay. These guys, I was chasing around the garden a lot. One of my focus with the flower piercer is I wanted to get a shot of a flower piercer hanging upside down with sticking its head up in the flower. I didn't really have much luck with that shot. I got a shot of a female flower piercer that was hanging upside down, but the head wasn't exactly in the flower, so I didn't get the shot that I wanted. But I did get option 2, which is basically a flower piercer on a flower. So when I go through and edit these photos, basically going through, picking them one by one and do my edits to it. And then oftentimes I will like wait a week or two and then come back and edit them again, or add some touch-ups or change some edits. So for me, a photo is not done in terms of being edited until I submit it into a contest or print it up on my website to sell as a print or doing something else with it. As long as it stays on my drive in Lightroom and doesn't get distributed anywhere else, social media doesn't count, but doesn't get distributed anywhere else, then I will occasionally come back to my photos and make some touch-ups. re-edit maybe. Like I'll completely reset all my edits and just start all over. So I got two. All right. Let's go and play around with quetzal, because these are cool birds. Let's see. So what I like about this shot is I like the environment shot that the quetzal is in. I like that you can see the whole bird and you can see the tail completely right here. I wish there was a little bit more cleaner to help the quetzal pop more, but at least the background, for the most part, it's a little distracting, but also at the same time, it is simple in terms of like an environmental shot. Like there's not a bunch of like twigs and stuff everywhere. Sure, there's a lot of leaves, but it's for the most part consistent in terms of like all the patterns and texture in the background, which doesn't exactly take away from the quetzal. And this one, I wish I was able to see the whole tail here. But I do like the framing that I got going on. So you got all around it, you got this framing right here of all these leaves. And then on the smaller scale, you got all these twigs right here, which can be a little distracting. But they do frame nicely around the quetzal right here. And then this one, I like the clean background around the back of the head. All these bright colors can be a little distracting. But you can see all the way to the tip of the tail, but I wish these limbs weren't there, and it was just like one limb right here that it's perched on, and all this was just nice and clean, clear shot straight to the tail. But you know, you can't get everything that you want. So, yeah, I'm going to hold off on the quetzal shot right now. You guys tell me in the comments which one you would want me to edit. 1, 2, or 3. So yeah, 1, 2, or 3. Boom. Like I said, if there's any particular image that I have here that I've picked that you're interested in and you want me to edit, definitely let me know. About halfway through this live stream, and then at the end, I will give some details on how you can actually win a free metal print of any of these images that I've actually edited during this live stream. So basically, you'll have like about 15 images to choose from. So if there's any particular image that calls to you like, ooh, I like that one, that would be a cool print, definitely let me know, and I'll go and edit it as an option too. And I'm adding 3 stars to the images that I edit. When I rate my images, I usually go no less than 3, and then all the way up to 5. I'll come back and change the ratings on these images later, but right now I'm just adding 3 as a reminder that these are the ones that I have edited so far. This guy right here, I am going to go ahead and play around with this one. So another species of hummingbird. Had to look up, see what species he is. Talamanca hummingbird. Yes. I probably butchered that name. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and edit this guy. And then once I'm done with this one, I'll go back to the quetzal. So first of all, I am going to do an 8x10 crop and tight it in with him directly in the middle there. So there's this perch in this gap of leaves right there on the tree that this hummingbird kept going back and forth to consistently. It would go there, rest, fly out to the hummingbird feeder, come back here. And I thought it was really cool with this gap in the leaves. It's kind of like a window looking into the home of the hummingbird. Plus, I like the framing of the leaves around the hummingbird. So while everybody else was like photographing all these different birds, I pulled out my 100 to 500 millimeter lens, and I just focused on this particular spot, this particular hummingbird as he came back and forth. And I was like getting up on my tippy toes and wrapping my arm around the post and trying to get that perfect angle. I wish I was just a couple inches taller, and then it could have been even better. But this is what I got. Alright, so first thing I'm going to do with this is I'm dropping those highlights down. Because I kind of want to darken these edges, because all these bright leaves, to me, do kind of take away from the subject. So I'm going to darken that. Let's go ahead and do a radio gradient there. And I'm just going to do the radio about like that. Invert it. I'm going to change my feather because, oop, too much. There we go. So you can see everything in this small circle right here, that is not going to be edited. And I'm going to keep that right there on the hummingbird. And then everything else, we are going to darken. Boom. Yeah. Maybe too much. Yeah, there we go. I think we'll do that. Great. Now, let's do another radio gradient. Boom. Right here in the middle. Once again, around my hummingbird, I'm going to change the feather a little bit. And this time, I am going to edit my hummingbird and that little window. So I want to brighten this window a little bit more. So let's increase the exposures there. Just like that. Go down to the effects. Going to add a little more vignette to it to darken those corners a little bit more. So before, after. I like it. Look at that detail. Oh, that's so nice. Look at that finer detail on those feathers right there. Those little white pieces. That is so cool. Got some scuffed up marks here on the bill. Bet you never looked at a hummingbird this close before. Alright. Let's go play with that eye. And then just decrease. There we go. I've actually held a hummingbird once upon a time. I was a kid and I caught a hummingbird. But how I caught it was actually stuck in a spider web and it couldn't go anywhere. So I'm like, have no fear, Trevor is here to rescue you. So I pulled it out of the spider web and it was just this cute little guy and he bit me with his beak and he was so adorable and then I let him go. Yeah, there we go. Just brighten that eye up a little bit. And then zoom out and see how it looks before. Okay, so look at the eye before, after. Look at that. You can see the eye a lot more. Oh, that's so great. I love it. I love going out and taking photographs and just being out in nature and being around animals. Like, I really love animals. But part 2 of that is coming home and editing the photos. And it is so exciting how much you could do with photography in terms of photo editing and all the different approaches you could take and just the minor adjustments, how big of a difference they make. It's really exciting stuff. Yeah. All right. Okay, so I'm going to do something that I haven't done yet on this guy. So I got this brown twig that's up here on the top. And I love all this green around it. But then there's just that brown piece. And I'm like, bleh. So I'm going to go and let's try this. Go down to color mixer. And I got hue, saturation, and luminance. And I could play around with these and change that. So like, boom. As you can see with my luminance, if I drop it, it drops the twig. But everything else. But what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to hit this bullseye right here. Click on the middle, drag down, and you can see how it's altering both my oranges and yellows, which is a lot better than just trying to decide what it is. So I'm going to darken that a little bit. And then bullseye again. I'm on my saturation. We'll just saturate it some, just so it's not so distracting. Alright, so yeah, a little bit better. Another piece I'm going to try to do on this one. Let's add a linear gradient. I'm going to drop it down. About right there. I'm going to darken it some more. So I'm kind of just bouncing back and forth and looking at the before and after and seeing if there's any other changes that I want to make to it, or if I want to reconsider a change that I have made. I think I'm gonna, for the most part, keep it like that for now. I am, though, going to try to brighten up my hummingbird. So I'm going to take the brush, and I'm just going to brush right around here, around the head. Just the head some. Try to brighten up those colors. And then let's increase the exposure. There we go. Boom. He's so cute. I'm gonna go back to my brush. I'm gonna subtract, and let's subtract. Oh no, subtract brush. There we go. And I'm just gonna subtract this piece right here. There we go. And the reason is you can see where it's kind of faded right there, where part of the leaf overlaps on that. And when I brighten that with the head, it does look a little awkward. So I'm just kind of getting rid of that line there. Feather more, drop it. Alright, now I want to zoom in and see if there's any real obvious marks. So yeah, you can see how it's hazy right here in this area. Like, you still see some of the detail, but it does have this bit of a hazy effect, and that's because the leaf that was in the way versus right here, this is nice and sharp. So this area where you can actually have that clear view of the feathers, that's what I want to be lit up and your eyes drawn to more. So that's why I erased this right here. Ta-da! All right. I will go ahead and go back to the quetzal, and I got request for quetzal number 3. All right, let's play with this guy. All right, so let's do an 8x10. Let's see what an 8x10 looks like on this. Yeah, I like 8x10 more. It brings it in closer, and then in addition to, it does kind of, you got a lot of this empty space up here, which has no purpose, or kind of takes away from the subject. And there's this lamb right here, and these leaves over here that are kind of distracting. So I'm going to crop it 8x10, bring it down to kind of decrease those distractions and get rid of that empty space. So here we are. Boom. Quetzal 3. So I'm looking at my histogram. Nothing looks overexposed, which is good. But I'm going to go ahead and drop my exposure down just a tad. And as you can see here, my triangle on the left is now blue. Nothing major showing up. If I drop it down even more, here. If I drop my blacks, there, now you can see all the parts that are underexposed and I lost detail. But let's move in here. That's looking good. All right, cool. So that's not a concern. Let's drop the highlights some. Actually, I'm going to drop them pretty much almost all the way down. And you can see here these lichens, how it does affect the lichens, see? So it brings a little bit more of that detail back and drops the highlights on them. Okay. Start the masking fun. Radio gradient. And I'm going to do a long vertical one right here over my quetzal. Boom. So pretty much almost the length of the quetzal. Yeah, I got part of the tail sticking out here, but for the most part, let's actually bring it up a little bit more. Great. Now I'm going to invert that. Drop the exposure. Darken the edges more. Boom. All right. And another thing I'm going to actually do, let's see, where is it? Okay, cool. So I was checking, making sure that I did have my circle still the way I wanted it. Nothing in the center here is going to be edited or touched, which is great because I'm going to go down here to my haze, dehaze, and I'm going to actually add a little haze. Just add a little bit and then maybe drop the clarity down, and that softens the edges a little bit more. So it takes away the detail and clarity on these like branches over here and brings your focus more to where the quetzal is. So it kind of minimizes the distraction a little bit. And then I'm going to go ahead and once again drop that exposure just a little bit more. Before, after. Right. Let's play around with color mixer on this one. I'm going to click on these very yellow, green, these vibrant green pieces here, and I'm going to drop the saturation on those. Just a little bit. There we go. So that way, in terms of colors, the quetzal stands out more. That's where all your eyes go, to the vibrant colors of the quetzal. So I'm just minimize the vibrancy of the background. Add another radio gradient. Boom. And let's brighten this just a little bit. And then I'm going to bring my feather up. Just bring this in more. Shrink it down. There we go. I just want to brighten up around there. I don't want to brighten all this up. I just want to brighten that a little bit around the quetzal. So there we go. Double click on my exposure back to 0. And I'm going to go up and just boom. Before, after. Before, after. Look at those very bright, beautiful colors. Isn't this so gorgeous? These are really cool birds. When we were there, it wasn't like the prime time to photograph the quetzals. April is the best time to photograph them. But we got lucky, and we actually got them every day. Not only did we find the quetzal when we were out and about driving the roads or going hiking looking for them, but back at the hotel or the lodge that we were staying at, they had a pair that hanged around there, and we got them there 2 mornings in a row. So not only did we find quetzals on our excursion, but we got them back at our lodge, which is pretty awesome. So we had multiple opportunities to photograph them. And this one and that one were photographed at the lodge that we stayed at. And then this guy was actually photographed while we were driving around one morning looking for him. And we went to one of the areas where they had been spotted. So we partnered with a local guide that knew where to go, which is really beneficial when you're going to a new place. So we went to photograph this quetzal, and it was kind of a misty / rainy morning, all morning long out there, rain covers on the camera gears, rain jackets on, and looking around trying to photograph this bird, and he kept just disappearing in the woods. And then he'll like cross the road, and there's a brief moment where he was like in this tree, and it was pouring raining, and he would fly up and then fly back down and fly up and then fly back down, and I was filming the whole time, and I did manage to capture a couple shots of him during that scene. But yeah, quetzal chasing, a lot of fun. All right, so back to this one. Zoom in. So the detail around here in the head looks pretty good. Like the eye pops really nice. You got some of that nice white glare in it. Good profile. Yeah, I think for the most part, that's what I would do with that one. Actually, let me try something real quick. Let's go to hue. I'm going to see if I could change the hue of the yellow-green coloration. Nope. Just a tad. I'm trying to make it, I want to make it a little bit more of the bluish color. Less yellow, more blue. Yep, I think I will leave it at that for now. And the reason I was trying to add a little more of a cooler tint to the background, to the subject, or not to the subject, to the background in the leaves, is so that way you don't have all this like warm tint of the background just popping out at you. I want it to kind of settle into the background more, to fall in the background more. So that's why I add a little bit of that blue tint to it. But yeah, before, after. And you can see right here on the edges where I soften those edges. All right. Let's see what to do next. All right. I'll do one more photo here on this sequence. And then I will go ahead and move on to Osa Peninsula. So I'm just going through my photos right now. And that one I edited. That's been edited. That's a fasciated tiger-heron. Lesser violetears. I took so many photos of this guy. Like I took over, I filled up an entire memory card of 64GB memory card and took more than 1,000 images of this particular hummingbird in general. He kept flying back and forth to this perch, and I wanted a photo of him taking off. And I don't have like pre-capture on my camera, and it's very hard to time it just right because the moment they take off and you hit that trigger, you're already too late. So when he's like sitting at the perch, I would hold down my trigger button and just take like multiple photos on high speed capture, and just taking a big sequence of images of him just perching there, hoping that one of those moments that I'm holding the trigger, he actually takes off. So I had a little bit of success with him, as you can see here. I think I like that one. He looks pretty proud in that shot. Flame color tanager. Acorn woodpecker. I thought the acorn woodpeckers are pretty birds. Yeah, let's go with this one. All right. Start off, let's do that radio. Invert. Darken those edges. Boom. Great. And then I'm gonna go to color mixer, saturation, hit the bullseye. I'm gonna drop the, actually not the saturation, let's do luminance. There we go. I'm gonna drop the luminance on this big yellow flower right there. That way it's not as distracting. There we go. Going back to my radial gradient. Let's haze out the edges, soften them up more. Drop the clarity. Boom. Drop the exposure some more. Okay. And now I'm going to add some vignetting on it. I am going to, let's try this. I'm going to do a radial gradients around the hummingbird right here. And then I'm actually going to subtract subject. Boom. Oh, it missed part of the wing. Let's hit the brush, zoom it in. And the reason I want to do a radial gradient and subtract the subject, because one thing I want to try is I'm going to try to brighten a little circle area behind the hummingbird to kind of make it look like the hummingbird is almost like in a spotlight of some sort. Because with that pose, definitely looks like a superstar. He's very proud of himself in its perch. If I was a hummingbird size, I would go up and give him a wing flap or wing slap or a high wing. There we go, high wing. That's what I'm trying to say. Like a high five. I'm also just rambling on as I paint or erase this. Alright, I don't want this, I don't want brighten my branch. So, have any of you all ever been to Costa Rica? It's a really cool place. Highly recommend going there. A lot of great wildlife there. Oh, run one. There we go. Okay, let's try this. So I'm going to increase exposure. Actually, what if I'm going to increase the haze just in that particular area? Oh yeah, I like that a lot better. I'm actually going to make that bigger. Come on, let me click it. There we go. Let's increase that just a little bit more, and I would have to do some more erasing. That side's good. Let's go to the other limb here. For the most part, that looks good. I'm going to add a brush because I just want to paint this little piece back in right there. Boom. 4 after, 4 after. Yeah, that really helps the hummingbird pop a lot more. Alright, now let's go and select subject. And I'm going to subtract brush. And I'm just going to erase this over here. And then I'm going to erase just part of this branch. Not a whole lot though. There we go. I'm going to keep part of the branch. Add some little detail to that branch. Exposure on the hummingbird I like. I'm not going to mess with that. Let's add a little clarity to him, just a tad. Need to zoom in. There we go. Clarity. Cool. Look at those iridescent feathers. Isn't that so cool? Doesn't it make you want to be a hummingbird for Halloween next year? Alright, let's add a brush to the eye. Let's brighten up that eye a little bit. Boop, just one click. And exposure up. One more thing. I'm going to go back to that circle and brighten it up a little bit maybe. Now I'm going to go back to the radial gradient and just kind of brighten that up a little bit more too. Yeah, there we go. One more thing. Let's select background. No, not the wing. All right. Just brush it away. I'm selecting the background because my next plan is I actually want to cool down the background a little bit. It is looking pretty warm. So I'm gonna cool it down. That way it helps the hummingbird pop even more. Changes the mood a little bit too. So we'll experiment with that and see how it goes. That's one of the fun things about like doing these live photo editing videos is because these photos that I'm playing with right now, I haven't edited them yet. So you go and watch a like Lightroom photo editing course and you know it seems streamlined. Like it's boom boom boom, one thing to the next, and everything's planned out and they know what they're doing and yada yada yada. But when it's live, there's a lot of trial and error and experimenting and seeing if you could create your vision. And a lot of times too is like you will edit a photo, and this happens to me. You would edit a photo and then after you edit, it doesn't turn out how you visualized it, and then you just like toss it away. It's like, nah, never mind. So that happens a lot too. All right. Oh yeah, background. Go back. Where are you at? Boom. All right. So I'm on temperature. Let's drop the temperature, add a little more coolness to it. Not too much. There we go. There we go. Now my hummingbird looks like a superstar. Superstar, jazz hands. Alright, so I think that's what I will do with these here. So these are Oh, wait. Gotta go back. I didn't. Come back. There you go. 3-star. Okay. Boom. Great. So here are the 5 images that I've edited for the first third of the edits. So slaty flower piercer, mountain jewel, the lesser violetear, resplendent quetzal, and the other hummingbird that started with the T that I can't remember the name right now. Alright, so befores and afters of these guys. Before, after. Before, after. I do like that cooler tint. Before, after. Before, after. So you can see how on some of these I definitely spend a little more time on some of the edits versus others. It kind of depends on the image. Okay. Now, let's move on down to the Osa Peninsula. No photos. There we go. Okay, first photo that I would definitely want to edit. I've been dying to edit this one ever since I took it. We're of these bats. I love these bats. They're so cute. Common tent making bats. They will like make their homes or roost underneath like vegetation that's hanging down. And another thing about tent making bats is sometimes they'll find like big leaves and they'll just kind of munch across the center of the leaf, causing it to fold down like a tent, and then it'll roost up underneath of that. And I think tent making bats are really adorable. Like, look at the faces. Look at those little noses. Aren't they so cute? Little noses, big beady eyes, and a nice coloration. Look at that claw right there. That's so cool. And look at, I don't know if they're what they are, but look at those insects that they have on them. It's quite interesting. Probably some kind of parasite. But one of the things I loved about this image is I like all of the leading lines that kind of take your eyes straight to the center, to the subject, which is the little family of bats that we got here. And I did have to use like a little box light. Seeing if I had it next to me. Here we go. So I actually used this device right here when we were doing macro and nighttime photography in Costa Rica. And this wasn't actually at night. This is during the day, but they were kind of in a dark area. So I used my light here to shine on the bats to get a couple photos of them. And yeah, this was just one of those images that I was just super excited to come home and edit. So let's do it. One thing I do like about this one is it already has a little bit of like a natural vignette going on around it, which is good. So it helps darken the edges a little bit more for me. And this is one of those photos where I actually probably won't do a whole lot, but I'm going to increase the contrast just a little bit. Drop the saturation down. There we go. And I'm going to go ahead and increase the clarity overall. Increase a little bit of texture. So these are all just edits that I'm doing to the whole image instead of just localizing it. Highlights, drop those highlights down. I'm going to turn my exposure up though. There we go. Looking at my histogram on my exposure as I turn it up, drop more highlights down. There we go. A little more exposure just to brighten them up. Let's go ahead and add a little more vignette. I've actually, when I was in college, we had a biologist bring bats to school, and I got to hold the little bats. It was so cool. They're so cute, little tiny little guys here in Missouri. And when I was in Costa Rica, we did like a little project while I was in graduate school, and we were up in Monteverde, and they had bats come into the feeders, and we were like just observing these bats as they come to the hummingbird feeders at night, which is really cool. Like you get the hummingbirds during the day, and then the nectar eating bats come to those feeders at night. And we had a bat biologist there, and he was handling bats and like showing them us up close, and it was a really cool experience. Why do I have it as a 1-star? Well, my original intent was I was going through here on the pick images, and I was trying to like pre-select on like what 5 images to do from each folder. So I was giving all the images that I originally were going to edit a 1 star. But then after a while, I just couldn't decide, and I figured it'd be more exciting just to have a wider selection and have you all pick an image that calls out to you that you may want me to edit instead of me just choosing 5. So that's why it has a 1 star, because I was originally trying to pre-select it, or planning on pre-selecting. All right, did I do vignette? I got distracted. I did do vignette. All right. Let's do a radial gradient. And I'm not going to darken the edges any more than what they already are, but I am going to invert that. Feather, not too much. There we go. All right, so I do want to soften those edges. A little bit of a, let's actually just drop the clarity down. Let's see, maybe a little haze. The only downside about adding haze is it does kind of brighten it up more, and I don't always want it to brighten it up. It does add a nice fog effect, but for this scenario, I don't want to brighten the edges up, so I am just going to drop the clarity, maybe drop some of that texture there too, just to blur out the edges and bring more of your eyes to the subject here. All right, before, after. Yeah, even that changes in the saturation made a difference. Let's see, maybe I drop a little bit more. Nah. Changed my mind. Why do they nest in a plant? These particular bats, so why exactly did they nest in the plants particularly or specifically? I don't 100% know. My guess is it's one of those areas that minimize competition with other bat species, because there's a lot of different bat species in Costa Rica. And it was just one of those areas that provided a safe home for the bats without competing with other bats. And over time, they just evolved and adapted to basically make their home under vegetation. And like I said, tip-making bats, they will like cut the edges of the leaves to force them to fold over. This particular plant right here, this is actually a tree where the leaves are naturally just kind of hanging over. So they didn't really have to do any work to find this perch. But in some cases, if you're ever like trekking through a jungle, especially on the Osa Peninsula, and if you see plants with like big, broad leaves, definitely study those leaves carefully, because if you see any that look like they're bent over into a tent shape, there's a very high chance that there are bats in them. All right. I am going to, let's do another radial gradient. Oh, snap, wrong one. There we go. Just around the bats. I am going to keep it in the bats this time. Shrink my feather up. Nope, change my mind. Going the other way. Shrink in my circle. There we go. And then I do want to add just a little more clarity on the bats right there. All right, let's see. Checking the clarity. You can definitely tell how some of the bats are more in sharper focus than others. But overall, I'm just checking the clarity on them, making sure that it doesn't seem awkward or unnatural. Before, after, before, after. Cool. All right, next photo. So I will go through these photos real quick, and you could tell me if there's a photo that stands out to you that you would like me to edit. Got spider monkeys, the cute little baby on it. Coatis, lesser anteaters, squirrel monkey, spectacle caiman, capuchin, another spider monkey, another one baby, howler monkeys. So in Costa Rica there are 4 species of monkeys, and you can actually find all 4 species on the Osa Peninsula. So squirrel, spider, capuchin, and howler monkeys are the 4 species of monkeys you can find in Costa Rica. Another howler monkey. Howler monkeys are pretty cool. They're very loud. There's definitely been times where I was sleeping in Costa Rica out in the rainforest, and about 4 o'clock you just hear this howler monkey's like roar, and you right outside the room, and it just wakes you up in the middle of the night, and it's hard to get any sleep when they're starting to wake up and talk. Red-lored parrot, scarlet macaw, and a Mesoamerican slider, I believe what this turtle was. Yeah, so like I said, if any of these images stand out to you that you would like me to play around with or edit, definitely let me know. I think I'm going to go with the macaw next. Everybody loves macaws. Okay, so first of all, I'm going to crop this just a tad, because there's this little twig up here in the corner that just, it kind of ruins that cleanness in the background. And I don't want it there. Just a minor thing that I'm like, bleh. There we go. So just crop it down a little bit. There. Alright, so a little contrast. Let's increase my shadows. Brighten up my macaw a little bit more. Never mind. I'm not going to do that, because if I increase my shadows, that also brightens up my bromeliad down here, and I don't want to brighten up that plant. So let's do select subject. Add brush. Make my brush bigger. All right, let's paint in this tail. Oops, I'm gonna get rid of that auto mask right there. Do 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 do. That theme song was like in my head the entire time while I was in Costa Rica, the Jurassic Park theme song. So when we came across these macaws, we saw a lot of macaws while we were in Costa Rica. And most of them were like flybys. You just see these pairs that are just constantly flying by. And so we went on a drive on our final day down in the Osa Peninsula, the final full day of our workshop. And we came across 2 of them. Our guide took us to a couple nests that he knew of. One we went to was in the trunk of the tree. And the macaws, they poked their head out, they looked at us, and then they flew off, and it was kind of disappointing. So they were more shy. They did not like us there. So we continued on, and we went to another nest, which was kind of like in the large limb of the tree, which is where I photographed this guy, actually. And They lingered around for us quite a while, and they actually let us get within a fairly close distance of them too, which is really neat. Beautiful birds. But yeah, got some great shots of them. And it was really neat to finally have an opportunity to photograph some scarlet macaws. Alright, how's this look up here? Oh, the toes. Gotta get the toes. For the most part, the Lightroom masking feature is like really awesome. You don't have to worry about doing this in detail, but as you can tell, it's not perfect. Okay. Great. Now I'm going to bring up my shadows. That's better. And I'm going to drop my highlights. Just dropping the highlights so that way it's not so bright around the head right there. Make sure I don't blow out that detail in that area. And then let's add a little bit of a clarity to him. Called him a ham, but in all reality, I actually don't know if it's a boy or girl. This fella was on the limb, while the other one was in the nest. And then eventually, this fella went into the nest, and then they both emerged, and they both hanged out for a little bit, and then they departed and went on their little adventure. Add a little more clarity around the eyes. So if you didn't see that, I just added a little brush on the eye right there, and add a little bit of clarity to it, brighten it up a little bit more. And then let's drop my highlights for the whole photo. Can I add a little more blue? No. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and take care of this green right here and darken that. Luminance, drop you down. So the problem with that is it's hitting greens and yellows, and it's also affecting the colors on my macaw too, which is what I don't want. I think actually let's just do saturation. Saturate this a little bit right there. How's this look over here? Just checking these colors. Alright, I'm going to select sky and see if it actually will select all the white in it. Awesome. It just missed this little piece right there. So I'm going to brush that in. That was sloppy. Come in closer and do it the right way. All right, so add, brush. There we go. Okay, now let's see if I'm going to add a little blue to it. See if I drop the exposure. There we go. Bring back some of that blue sky to add a little more color to it. I do like it with the white background too, because it really helps the macaw pop a little bit more. But I'm kind of experimenting right now. Dropping down the exposure on the sky, bringing back some of the blue, see how that looks. And then I'm going to go back to my macaw. Great. And then I'm going to warm him up just a tad. So yeah, there we go. Before, after, before, after. Another thing you could do, which it's not something I would want to really do on this one, but I could go down here, and so it's got the sky. I could take the saturation all the way down, boom, and then go to the color, hit this X right there, which is under my saturation. Click on that, and then pick colors. And you can see how my color of my background changes a little bit based on where I click. But I don't want to do that. There we go. Before, after. Okay. Let's see. What's next? I think I'm gonna go with one of these spiders right here. I love all these like reddish leaves around it. I think I'm gonna go with this one. It's a nice frame that we have right here. I like this frame of this branch here and all these red leaves that kind of go around with the spider monkeys. It's not exactly a clean background or a clean shot though. And right now the spider monkeys are a little bit dark, which if I brighten them up, it'd probably be a little noisy as well. So let's get busy. Alright, so I'm gonna... Yeah, so this was the original image actually right there. That's how bright it really was. It was really dark. So I'm just gonna brighten it up. Boom. Just a little bit, not too much, because that's also brightening the background, and I don't want to brighten that a whole lot. Add a little contrast. Bring up my shadows. Drop down the highlights. Also, if you are interested in achieving a metal print of any of these images that I have edited, so basically you get 15 images to choose from this whole live streaming. To get a chance to win a metal print, follow me on Facebook or Instagram at Trekking with Trevor, and then send me a direct message and say in the message monkey. So yeah, say in a message monkey, and then in a week I will put all those names in a drawing, and then draw a name, and the winner gets a free print. So the deadline for this will be February 7th. I'm gonna write that down. All right. So yeah, follow me on Facebook and Instagram at Trekking with Trevor, and send me a direct message monkey. And then on February 7th, I will draw a name, and the winner gets a free print of any of the images that I edited on this live stream. So, continuing on with this monkey. And I'll repeat that again later. Doo-doo-doo. Alright, I'm going to do radial gradient. Around the monkey here, I'm going to bring this feather all the way up. Invert. Take the exposure down just a little bit, and then let's haze it up a little. I'm gonna drop the clarity, not the haze. There we go. And then let's select subject. Are you serious? Alright, so I hit select subject, and if you look over here at this corner on the right side of the image, you can see a little red that shows up. That is what it thinks my subject is. Wow, the masking feature is totally wrong on that one. Alright, so new play. I'm going to, let's brush it in. Back to those old-fashioned days of what you had to do on Lightroom if you really wanted to mask something. Yeah, I remember that time. When we had to really get specific and like zoom in and just brush everything, that was, for me, it was kind of discouraging. It was like, oh, I gotta spend all this time just brushing in my subject, when in all reality, I just want to just edit. And yeah, I did not like spending all that time just brushing in finer details. Yeah, do 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 do. Usually when I'm editing photos, sometimes I'll listen to music, sometimes I'll listen to an audiobook, and other times I just sit in complete silence and contemplate my thoughts. Other times, I'm just completely distracted by the dog. It is very hard to get a lot of photo editing done when you got a dog, especially a husky, that just constantly wants to play, constantly wants to go outside, wants in, wants out, wants attention, wants play, gives you the stare. Like, the husky stares are the worst because they'll just lock eyes onto you and will not blink until you give them what they want. And it's so hard to say no on that. My wife and I, we watched the movie Wicked yesterday, and our TV is on the floor. So we sit on the floor to watch a movie. And we're watching Wicked. Great musical, by the way. Great movie. I really loved it. But our dog was very needy and would come in many times and just stand in front of the screen and stare at us. And we tried multiple things. We tried treats. We tried playing with him. We tried taking him for a walk and giving him food and water. I would even just grab him and hold on to him, like, and force him to kind of cuddle with me. And yeah, after a while, he finally did fall asleep. But what was like a 3-hour movie took us about 4 hours to watch because we had to pause it so many times. Alright, I'm almost done. Yeah, I like it so much more when the masking feature just booms, selects your subject for you and you don't have to do all this. Whose idea was it to edit this monkey? Okay. I mean, it's not perfect. But maybe good enough. Alright, I'm gonna bring up my shadows. And then I'm gonna add a little warmth to them. There we go. Add a little bit of clarity. There. And drop my saturation down for the whole image. Alright, now I'm just looking and making sure that there's no weird scars or marks from editing it from when I painted it in. So far it looks good. Everything's still looking clean and natural. Before and after. So yeah, that's before. This is after. A lot better than what it was. Another reason I like to look at the befores and afters is because I do like to look at the coloration of my subject, and I want to make sure that they're not too vibrant or saturated and don't look natural. So that's one of the reasons why I do like going back and forth. Alright, I'm going to take a linear gradient and I'm going to bring it in like this. Oops. Boom. And then let's drop that exposure. Let's bring it in some more. Boom. Rotate just this a tad. There we go. Drop the exposure a little bit. So drop those highlights some. Let's go ahead and blur that out a little bit more. There we go. What if I haze it? Here, add some haze, kind of soften it up some. There we go. Making sure there's all this is a little less distracting over there. I feel like I could do more to this one, but I don't know what yet. This is definitely one that I want to play with more, have to come back to. But for the time being, I'm going to go ahead and move on to another one. Let's do the Kuwati. Or actually, let's change it up a little bit. Do the howler monkey. This one I already have an idea on what I want to do. So this guy, I'm going to do something different than I've done before. I'm going to actually focus on this one being black and white image. And the reason is because it does have that huge contrast right there between the light and the dark. So that's one of the big reasons why I'm going to focus on this being black and white. So add a little more contrast to the image as a whole. I want to bring up my shadows. Actually, select my subject and then bring up my shadows. Alright, boom, brush all this around him. Boom, boom, boom. Brush a twig out. Yep, alright, let's zoom in. Brushing this, get rid of that. Doop. Grease the brush, get rid of more of this twig right here. Here we go. Okay, come over. Is that in? Nope, okay. So brush that out. And then add, brush, make that bigger, go bigger. wrap around here. Shrink it up a little bit more, kind of clean it in some. Get this little piece up here. Boom. There we go. All right, now I'm going to increase my shadows. There we go. Maybe brighten him some. Drop my highlights down, all the way down. Then I'm going to zoom in, look at the face especially. Great, now let's add some detail to him. I'm going to actually drop my shadows back down. There we go. And the reason is when I brought the shadows up, it did add more noise to that area, which I didn't like, so I'm just going to leave the shadows down. But I am going to increase the clarity. Drop some whites. There we go. Alright, so let's add a linear gradient. Because this side is darker, so the sun is coming in from this side over here. So I'm going to add a linear gradient and darken this whole side of him. Oops. There we go. So I'm going to drop that exposure on that whole side. There we go. And then I'm going to do that again. Come in up. Right here. Drop that down a little bit. Okay. Then I'm going to drop the exposure of the whole image just a tad. And then let's add some ray of sunshine. Radial gradient coming in about right there. And then I'm going to brighten that a little bit. Because this area is lit up and this side's on the darker side, so you can tell that the sun's coming in this direction. So I'm just basically just increasing some of that exposure and brighten the edges to amplify that a little bit more. Before, after, before, after. Okay, that is the howler monkey. All right, one more to choose in this group. Let's go with the squirrel monkey. So the reason I'm going to go with this guy is I'm going to focus on dropping the exposure down, and I want to focus more of kind of like that, little bit of that backlit like scenario. So dropping my shadows down a little bit more. There we go. I'm going to add more clarity to the image as a whole. Radio. Nice and long. Let's rotate it. Let's go a little bit bigger. There we go. Invert. I'm going to drop the exposures on the corners some here. And then let's add some haze. I'm going to add a little warmth to this. Just a tad to kind of make it seem more of like an early morning shot. Not too much though. Actually, maybe I'll do that in a color mixer. Or color gradient. Yeah, so I'm going to go with my highlights here. I'm just going to take this and just bring up the yellows a little bit more. Kind of play around. You can see how it affects the highlights wherever I put this little dot on the circle. So I'm just going to add a little more yellow to it. And then the shadows, seeing what's being affected by the shadows. Alright, so I'm going to add a little, just a tad bit of blue to the shadows here. Okay, let's see. Highlights. Let's bring my highlights down. Not too much. Starts to look awkward. Let me drop my exposure a little more. Let's see. Select subject. Squirrel monkeys are adorable, guys. We actually had some nice opportunities to see them. This was actually photographed in Corcovado National Park, which is one of the most diverse areas in the world. Highly recommend going there. It's pretty cool. And if you ever get the chance, I definitely recommend going on like a hiking expedition there. So you could take like a day trip there, either like take a boat up to the Sierra Station in that area and hike around there. But my wife and I, one year, we actually hiked into the park, and it was 10 miles hiking in, and then we spent 2 nights at the Sierra Station and hiked out 10 miles. And that was a lot of fun. We saw a lot of cool stuff, and I really enjoyed that experience. Got to see more that way as well. So if you ever get the chance to go to Corcovado, and if you could do the hike, I highly recommend hiking around. But there's a lot of stuff you can see in general within the park, just on a simple day hike, which is basically what we did for this excursion. We spent one morning in Corcovado National Park. We departed the lodge at 4:30 a.m., hop on the boat at 5:30, and then took an hour-and-a-half boat ride to Corcovado National Park. Oops, didn't want to do that. And it was pretty bumpy on the way, but a lot of fun. We did see some bottlenose dolphins. That was neat. Saw a few sea turtles. Anytime we tried to get close to them, they would go underwater, so it wasn't really any good photo opportunities. Corcovado, once we got there, was definitely hot. It was actually fairly crowded when we got in there, too. Near the entrance was a boa constrictor, which was really neat. Kind of tucked away between some wood planks. A little guy, though. I would probably reckon maybe around 3 feet, so not a huge fella. But yeah, had some good squirrel monkey action or sightings when we were in the park as well. They got pretty low to the ground and got some good areas that were great for photography. Photographing in a forest in general can be quite difficult because you do have a lot of stuff going on around you, a lot of distractions. And a lot of times when you photograph portrait shots of wildlife, you want that nice, tight, clean background. And it's kind of hard to get that when you're in a forest. In addition to, there's just a lot going on. So sometimes it can be difficult to compose your image. So your best chances of composing an image is actually spending some time like studying your surroundings and paying attention to where your animal's going, not where it's at. Granted, it doesn't always work out that way. Okay, I finally got them all painted up and cleaned up. There we go. Now I just have the monkey. Whew, that was a lot. Alright, now I'm going to add clarity. There we go. And then Let's see, what if I add some more warmth to him? I'm gonna, yeah, add warmth to that guy. Drop the shadows a little bit. I'm gonna increase your highlights on this, increase that rim lighting some more. Rim lighting is not super strong on this. Alright, you can take my saturation and photo. So I'm back to the basic, editing the whole photo. I'm going to drop my saturation down a little bit. Yeah, this is one of those images where like I had an idea and I had a vision, but it's not exactly coming out how I was exactly visualizing it. Trial and error. Alright. Let's go to the... this guy. I would have loved this photo even more if this black piece right here is a tree. An underexposed tree. I wish that tree wasn't there because it kind of looks like he's about to ram right into a wall. But I do love this pose, and the lighting on his face is really nice as well. So it's kind of conflicting. Like, I like this because its head and the claws are in the light. Alright, let's see. No, turn that off. There we go. Okay, drop the highlights just a little bit. There we go. Let's add some contrast. I'm going to do an 8x10 on this guy. I don't know. It kind of seems weird though with that, just that big black area right there. I think I'm going to work on something else. It's one of those nitpicking things. It's like, oh, it could be good, but there's just a minor thing that just kind of ruins it for me. Alright, I'm going to go with this guy. Or actually, change my mind. I'm going to do this one. And I'm going to do a crop on that. Let's do 16x10. Do another 8x10. Nope. Change my mind. Let's just go back to the original. And then I'm going to crop it up. There we go. This is the one I'm going to work on. Alright, add a little contrast. Drop the highlights. Alright. I'm going to radio right around here. Put that dot right on the eye. Let's invert. Drop the exposure. Alright, select subject. Boom. Brush. Oops. I meant to subtract. Undo. Select brush. Subtract. All right, select brush. There we go. Let's see what else needs to be erased. That's part of the body. Okay, cool. So I'm gonna bring up the shadows of this fella. There we go. Add some clarity to him, but not too much because I don't want him to look prickly. Drop down my highlight some. There we go. And then I'm also going to just add a brush. And I want to brush in this tip of his nose right there, because that does seem a little too dark. It's a little odd. So I'm going to brush in this nose right here and actually brighten it up just a little bit. There we go. Increase the exposure. No, let's do shadows. And maybe a little bit of exposure. Not too much. Yeah, it's a little bit. Alright, the eye. Let's do the eye. I'm going to brush in the eye. Boom. And then brighten the eye just a little bit. There we go. There. Where's yet? There we go. Add in 3-star. 3, 3, 3. All right, and here's the 5 for folder number 2. Tent bats, lesser anteater, spider monkey with baby, howler monkey, and scarlet macaw. So yeah, befores and after. Oops. Hope if I'm in develop. There we go. Before, after, before, after, before, after, before, after, before, after. All right, now we're moving on to Tortuguero National Park. So, Tortuguero was a fun part of the expedition. For the most part, we didn't really get much rain during this trip, but when we went down to Tortuguero, we were on the boat pretty much each time. So when we do these wildlife expeditions, we go up, we wake up early, go out in the morning, photograph some animals, come back, kind of take an afternoon break session, a little bit of post-processing and relaxing and hanging out and stuff like that. And then we go back out in the evening and we go and take more photos. While we were in Tortuguero, we were on a boat pretty much every time, except there were 2 occasions where we actually did go hiking. We hiked once in Tortuguero behind the ranger station where we got to check in every time we go into the park. And then we also hiked around the lodge where we stayed at. And saw a lot of strawberry poison dart frogs, which is really cool. I don't have any photos here of the strawberry poison dart frogs, but they're like really neat, tiny little red frogs. Really cool to see. I love dart frogs. And so while we were in Tortuguero National Park, it rained a good amount of the time, and we got soaked. But it did result in some good photography. Oops. So let's see here what images to do on this one. This guy right here is definitely one I wanted to work on. This iguana was up in that tree pretty much every day. And this was at the lodges that we stayed at, Tortuga Lodge. And the final day, the sky was a little bit darker because of the rain, and I loved how he popped behind that sky. So make sure it's resetted. Great. So when I saw this image, I thought it'd be cool the lit up iguana in a darker sky. So that's basically what I'm going to try to focus on this. So add a little contrast. I'm going to increase the exposure to basically brighten up the iguana a little bit. Take down my highlights. And then I'm going to add a little clarity. Go, let's see, drop my saturation a little bit. Nice. Cool. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to select sky. Hopefully. Cool. So for the most part, I did a pretty decent job on selecting the sky. Even got all the little parts here. It's not perfect, but it's manageable. But one thing I do notice that I am going to fix is there's this little piece underneath the iguana's armpit that is not selected. So I'm definitely going to zoom in and paint this piece in. Adding auto mask. Hopefully does a decent job for me. For the most part. So auto mask, usually the great thing about auto mask is like if your circle here like overlaps over the subject, it won't mask it. So like you can see here, it's not exactly painting the iguana because the center part is mainly on where the sky's at. But I'm going to go ahead and subtract brush and then clean up this little area that did overlap here before I did auto mask. Clean this up here. Okay. Great. Now let's darken the sky. And then I'm going to add a little more blue to it. More contrast. More blue. Too much blue. Let's see if I turn the saturation up. Okay, I'm gonna keep it there. Just a little cooler than what it was. And then my subject, let's hit select subject. Come on, come on, come on, get my iguana. Oh, no. Dang it. Okay, apparently I can't find my subject. So let's paint this in. Boo, 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 boo. Erase this lamb, gotta zoom in on that. Iguanas are cool. I had a pet iguana when I was a kid. I don't think it liked me much, because every time I went and picked it up, I got smacked in the face by its tail. It's one of the defense mechanisms that they have. I don't recommend having an iguana, period, though. Even though they're herbivores, or that they mainly feed on vegetation, they actually do have a really nasty bite if they get feisty and a little aggressive. Luckily, I've never been bitten by my iguana. I have been bitten by a Savannah monitor once, though. I adopted a Savannah monitor when I was a kid. Named him Bruce. He was so cool. I really loved that Savannah monitor. Alright, now I'm going to add brush. I don't know. This is kind of a difficult one here because you got all these spines right there, and I don't know. See if the auto mask works. I may actually take a different approach than trying to. Yeah. All right, so I'm gonna try something different on this. Delete that mask. Let's go down and do the color mixer. Let's do luminance, and then I'm gonna put it on this guy right here. Let's see if I could brighten him up a little bit more. It does brighten up a little bit more. Okay, so that helps. What about... Let me bring my exposure up more. And then let's go back to the sky. Drop the exposure more on the sky. Okay, I'm going to do a linear gradient because all this vegetation is a little too bright for me. So I'm going to do a linear gradient all the way up here. And that way I'm going to darken that just a little bit. There we go, to make that iguana pop a little bit more. How does it look? Maybe a little bit more up. And then I'll go ahead and drop the clarity on that just a tad. Alright, now I'm going to zoom in on the face and I'm just going to look on the face here. Let's go even closer. 400. Alright, let's brush up that eye right there. So this guy I shot with the 100 to 500 millimeter lens. It's at the end of the trip. We were about to board the boat to start heading to the airport, and yeah, I saw this guy up in the tree, and I'm like, I want that photo. Brighten the eye a little bit. Great. And then just drop those blacks down. There. Alright. Let's go with, let's do a sloth. Everybody loves sloths. So let's do a sloth. There we go. Look at this. Look at this. Look at this. Look at that. It's like he's smiling. You can see his little tongue there. Eyes are closed. Seems like he's just living the high life. Pura vida. So one thing I do like about this shot is I do like how these limbs right here are kind of arching down at a diagonal and framing around him. And for the most part, there's not a whole lot of distractions going on for the distance that I had on this. So let's drop the highlights. There we go. Add contrast. Exposure. Drop the exposure down a little bit. And then let's select sky. Cool. Did a pretty good job on selecting the sky. So drop that down. I'm going to add a little blue tint in the sky. Actually drop highlights down. Nah. Never mind. Sky's too blown out. It's not doing what I want it to do. I'm going to ignore that then. Delete mask. I am going to do a radial gradient though. That way I can focus on this area right here around the sloth. I kind of want to just keep that, just light that area up a little bit more. Drop the highlights there. There we go. So drop the exposure everywhere else. Great. Go back to the radial gradient. Maybe add a little feather to that right there. Boom, right over their head. Just do this again. Just want to brighten it up. Nice. Alright, I'm going to do a linear gradient from this direction. Coming in. And because I want to I want to blur out these corners right here. Gosh darn it. Keep missing. There we go. Okay, so I'm gonna drop the clarity on that so there's more detail focused around the sloth. And then I'm gonna do it again on the other side. So this is a three-toed sloth. There are two species of sloths in Costa Rica. There's a three-toed and there is the two-toed. Drop clarity there. We actually saw quite a few sloths on the Tortuguero expedition. Okay, so let's go to color mixer and let's go with hue. Can I add a little more blue to the vegetation? No, don't like it. Change my mind. I like it how it is. Drop the saturation down. And then let's see if it selects subject. Nope. Okay, so it didn't select the sloth. It selected its arm, but it also selected a few tree limbs. So let's erase that. Bye, bye, bye. Bye, bye, Miss American, bye. Pull my Chevy to the levee, but the levee was dry. The good old boys are sipping whiskey and rhyme, saying this will be the day that I die. Actually, I sure hope not. Okay. Now we're facing it in. Scratching the sloth's belly. Goochie goochie goo. Up the arm. So how's everybody else doing? Hopefully having a lovely work week. If you're in a place where there's lots of snow, I hope you're out playing in the snow. I don't got a lot of snow where I'm at. We had no snow when we were in Costa Rica. It was, which, you know, was expected, but it was like in the 80s up in Tortuguero National Park. And coming from like up here in the winter and then flying to Costa Rica, I'm like, oh my gosh, it is so hot. And then I acclimated for a little bit. And yeah, Tortuguero National Park, it was like 80 degrees there, which was pretty awesome. So the rain was, it didn't feel that bad with the rain. But after being in Costa Rica for 2.5 weeks and then coming back to the States, I was like so cold and like having 3 layers on. I was like, oh my gosh, it's cold in the house. Okay, I have highlighted my sloth. Now I'm going to add a little, just a little detail, clarity to him right there. I'm going to drop the highlights down. There we go. And then add a little warmth to him. Dude, too much. Just a little bit. There. Before, after. Before. There is one other piece I do want to fix, though. There's this green area right here that just too bright and kind of stands out. So I'm going to take a brush. Let's brush this right here. And then just drop those highlights. There we go. That's better. Not as bright and vibrant. Before, after. Before, after. Nice. All right. Oh, 3 stars. It's a lot of photos. Where'd my sloth go? I forgot to give him stars. Come here. Okay. 3. Alright, now I'm going to... Let's do... Bare-throated tiger-heron. There we go. Contrast, exposure. Drop to exposure too much. This one is one of those that I'm not going to worry about doing a whole lot too, because I like how lit up the tiger heron is and how dark the background is. So nice. Selected my tiger heron. That's perfect. Let's add a little clarity to him. Go and drop down your highlights some. There we go. And now I'm going to bring up your shadows. Boom. And maybe increase exposure just a little bit. Drop your highlights down more. Great. And then let's go ahead and do a radio just as a final touch-up. I'm not going to do a whole lot with this guy right here. This one's one of those that it's kind of quick and simple. Oops. Invert. That's not invert. Ta-da! Nice. All right, 2 more images. Let's go with... Let's do an aracari. These aracaris are pretty cute. Look at that face. Big beady eyes. I love that perspective. But I like this guy here. I love that he has a berry in his mouth. So let's go with this one. Boom. let's increase exposure a little bit. There we go. And then drop your saturation some. Nah, I like it how it is. What does it look like in black and white? Nah, I like it how it is. Alright, now let's go and I'm going to select subject, subtract. I don't want to include this plant over here, these leaves. No, 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 get out of here, shoo. Get off of my lawn. I will admit, it has taken me a lot longer to go through 15 photos than I originally was expecting. I'm running out of stuff to ramble on about. Okay, let's go between the bill. Pickle juice. Does anybody like pickle juice? I don't like pickle juice. I'm not much of a pickle person. Yeah, that's what we're down to right now. That's the only thing that could come to my mind. Alright, let's... I like his colors though. I don't really want to mess with them anymore. And just add a little clarity there. Bring up the shadows. And drop the highlights. And then, actually, let's do let's do a radial gradient. I'm gonna do it over my aracari. Drop the exposure. Maybe drop some of that clarity there, just a tad, not a whole lot, just to blur those edges some. Adding brush, because I want to darken this area right there. Just make it nice and black. Drop the blacks down. There we go. Okay. And then finally, I want to do great green macaws. It was so exciting to be able to see one of these. We got so lucky. Like we saw them in a distance a few times, and then we had like just a flock of about 8 come flying right to one of the trees right at the lodge, and just super exciting. Like I was running around telling folks, and I ran back to my room, and I got my camera, and it was at lunchtime, and it was raining, and I didn't want to eat, and I just wanted to photograph these macaws. I was just so excited that I was so excited that I had the opportunity to photograph these birds. Really cool. I think I'm gonna go with this one though, because I do kind of like the, I don't know, I do like the simplicity of that one though. So this one I like because I like the colors in it with the reds. That one you do get more of the macaw. And then I do like how clean of a background this one is. It kind of isolates the macaw a little bit more with the nut in its mouth, but you don't really see its tail. And then this one, yeah, it's kind of an environmental shot. And I like this one because I do like how he's kind of hidden in the vegetation. So a little more camouflage, which is kind of like the approach or story I would take on this one. But I think let's go. I don't know. All right. I'll let you all decide if you're which one you think I should edit. Macaw 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. Let's do this one. I'm gonna crop it down. There we go. Contrast. Drop my highlights. Not making much difference. Saturation a little bit. Nah, there we go. I'm gonna add some clarity, add a little texture. Radio, make it narrow, bring up the feather, put it over the eye, invert, drop the exposure. There we go. And then I do want to add vignette on this one to darken those edges a little bit more. All right, I'm going to paint the face there. The brush, just kind of like the red area right here. Trying to make it pop a little bit more. Increase exposure just a little bit. There we go. And then let's go even tighter on the eye. Oh, new brush. All right. Exposure up. Brush again. Boom. Drop the blacks. There. Cool. So the final product. Actually, a recap of all 5 images that I have photographed, or 15 images. There we go. So here's the 15 images that I have edited during this program. And like I said, if you're interested in free print of any of these images, a metal print with a value of $100, then follow me on Instagram or Facebook at Trekking with Trevor and send me a direct message saying monkey. And on February 7th, I'll put all those names in a drawing, and the winner gets a free print of any of these 15 images that I edited during the session. So here we are, just going through them one by one. Bats. Boom. Boom. Howler monkey. Scarlet macaw. Sloth. Tiger-heron. Great green macaw. Aracari. Green iguana. And these are all the images. Nice. All right, great. So that concludes this Lightroom session. until my next expedition, I will be back with more photos to edit, and I'll see y'all again in the future. So have a good week and enjoy your lovely days. Now I gotta figure out how to end this session. All right, bye.